Hello, so this is Drugs in Perspective. Chapter 2, Why People Use and Abuse Drugs and Alcohol. This chapter explores the various models, theories, and contributing factors of substance use and abuse. The models provide a framework for understanding substance abuse. The contributing factors help in the treatment strategies that may be implemented. This chapter lays the foundation for later chapters that focus on assessments, prevention, intervention, recovery, and relapse prevention. Our innate drive to alter consciousness. There are four primary drives: hunger, thirst, sex, and our desire to alter our consciousness. Drugs have been used throughout history to alter our consciousness and will continue to be used this way in the future. Drugs open avenues to unconscious issues, conflicts, and possibly unawareness or perception new to the user's life. On the downside, drugs can easily become traps that keep us from using our minds in positive ways. Drug use becomes unrealistic and neurotic when it becomes an addiction. Models, theories, and contributing factors of substance use and abuse. We cannot isolate one specific cause of alcoholism and other drug addictions. There are often multiple confounding reasons for addiction. Many theories and models of causality can exist. Early models of alcoholism labeled alcoholics inherently weak or unable to control their consumption of alcohol. One test of manliness was the ability to hold your liquor. Other early models focused on individual psychopathology, arguing that alcoholics used alcohol in a pathological manner to block out memories of unpleasant, traumatic personal experiences that brought with them unmanageable feelings. Over time, a physiological model of alcoholism developed as scientists searched for a biochemical link to or a genetic marker of alcoholism. Today, those of us in the alcohol drug field generally accept the fact that alcoholism and drug addiction have multiple causes and etiologies. The models described in this chapter present an overview of prevailing theories, research, and clinical observation in the field of alcohol and drug use and abuse. The models are intended to help you attain a better understanding of substance abuse. Unfortunately, no one model explains all substance abuse or fits all users' reasons for using. So tension and stress reduction. The tension reduction theory is one of the most widely researched theories of drug use. Early research focused on tension reduction and relief from stress as a primary reason for alcohol and drug use. Today, the tension reduction theory is considered one aspect of drug use. Individuals consume drugs for a variety of reasons, including sheer pleasurable feelings that accompany drug use. The tension reduction model involves the concept of homeostasis or balance. The tension reduction theory of alcohol has two major assumptions. So it assumes that alcohol reduces tension, and individuals drink alcohol for its tension-reducing properties. Trauma and substance use disorders. The American Psychological Association defines trauma as directly experiencing or witnessing an event that involves actual or threatened death or serious injury or other threat to physical integrity, or learning that a family member or close associate has experienced such events, and has a response that involves intense fear, helplessness, or horror. There are two major hypotheses regarding trauma and substance use disorders. The existing research tends to support the first theory. So the first theory is substance use and abuse is an attempt by the individual to assuage feelings related to traumatic experiences. The individual self-medicates by trying to outnumb, soothe, or escape the overwhelming feelings of pain, hopelessness, and shame associated with trauma. The second theory is that substance use and abuse contribute to the development of post-traumatic stress disorder. The use and misuse of alcohol and drugs can affect the individual in a number of ways, making them more susceptible and in harm's way for trauma. Chronic substance abuse can change neurochemistry, making the individual more susceptible to PTSD. The disease model of alcoholism. In 1957, the American Medical Association declared alcoholism a disease on the basis of 3 criteria. 1. Alcoholism has a known etiology. 2. The symptoms get worse over time. And 3. Alcoholism has known outcomes. The outcomes of alcoholism are dependence, physical symptoms, and eventually death. For more than 30 years, research has indicated an increasingly strong case for a genetic component of alcoholism. This validates the disease model. The 12-step approach is based on the disease model. It has been described as an informal biopsychosocial spiritual model. The disease model assumes alcohol/addicts were predisposed to addiction by genetically transmitted biological risk factor. The 12-step program helps the alcoholic overcome the terrible sense of isolation and aloneness that occurs as a result of many negative consequences of use. The shame-based stigma of addiction, along with guilt, negative feelings, and spiritual bankruptcy, make the 12-step approach of Alcoholics Anonymous an effective recovery tool for alcoholics. So here I have the 12 steps. So step 1, we admit we were powerless over our addiction, that our lives have become unmanageable. Step 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Step 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood God. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. Step 6, we entirely ready to have God remove all of these defects of character. Step 7, humbly ask God to remove our shortcomings. Step 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and become willing to make amends to them all. Step 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. Step 10, continually to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admit it. Step 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of God's will for us and the power to carry that out. And step 12, have a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. We tried to carry this message to other addicts and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Now, another word, God, is in here a lot, but it's not just for people who believe in a God. You can do the 12 steps and not be religious, because the way they say it is as God as you understand Him. So, there is one person I actually talked to who they said their God was Mother Nature. So they had admitted their lives had become unmanageable. They came to believe that a power greater than themselves could restore their sanity, Mother Nature. They made a decision to turn their will and lives over to the care of Mother Nature. So you can see where I'm going. On this place where I said God, they put Mother Nature. Or even if you don't have any. So, like 1, we admit we are powerless over our addiction. 2, came to the belief that power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. See, for me, when I had to quit, that part was hard for me, but instead of greater than myself, it was a greater power within myself that I found. And I turned my will over to that greater power in myself. And that is how I was able to get through it. So, you don't have to be religious to go through the 12 steps. So personality traits and personality disorders. So addictive personality. The concept of addictive personality is a simplistic approach that makes this mistake of labeling all alcoholics and other addicts as possessing a particular personality that leads to addictive and compulsive behavior. And then personality disorders. Of all the personality disorders, the one with the strongest relationship to substance abuse is narcissism. And the personality disorder with the second highest correlation to substance abuse is borderline personality disorder. A little tongue-tied there. So attachment and abuse. And substance abuse. Attachment plays a key role in being vulnerable to problems with alcohol and drugs. The bond between parent and child is a pivotal foundation in feeling safe, nurtured, and connected. Disruptions in attachments create problems in connection. Alcohol and drugs are used to compensate for this disconnection and to alleviate feelings of shame, worthlessness, inadequacy, loneliness, emptiness, boredom, anxiety, and depression. Trauma, sexual, physical, and emotional violations confound the problem, and the alcohol/drugs are sought out to alleviate the pain and suffering. Self-medication motive. The importance in exploring the self-medication motive is to help users identify why they are taking drugs and then learn how to cope better with the affective states and psychological problems they find so unbearable. The ability to identify and label emotional states and then work through these feelings is the foundation of drug prevention with young people and of treatment for those who are experiencing drug abuse, dependence, and addiction. Mood and affect disorders. Individuals who are experiencing problems in regulating their affect and mood may self-medicate with alcohol and drugs. Alcohol and drugs may be used to alleviate and self-medicate feelings of anxiety, depression, and even mania. Major depression, dystemic disorder, climactic disorder, atypical depression, and bipolar disorder are the primary affective or feeling disorders associated with substance use. So the family model is the model most emphasized throughout this book. It includes all aspects of family life, factors contributing to substance use in the family, including the following: imbalance in parenting, marital discord, alcoholic/addiction behavior, imbalance in dysfunctional family interactions, significant trauma and stress in the family, physical, emotional, sexual, and psychological violations, inappropriate boundaries, shame, abandonment, and rejection. Poor self-concept. The most frequently generalized risk factor for problems with substances is a poor sense of self-concept. Parents and schools talk about their children's general underachievement, shyness, and aggressive or antisocial behavior as being a result of this lack of good self-concept. Encouraging potential substance abusers to develop a sense of self is just one aspect of the problem. Other factors must also be addressed. Even children and adults who possess a wonderful and creative sense of self can be at risk. Improving the sense of self is a preventative inoculation, but is neither a cure nor a guarantee against having substance use problems. Boredom and altered states. Boredom is often cited as a major factor in substance use by adolescents as well as adults. Surprisingly, there has been very little research to date into the nature of the relationship between boredom and substance use problems. Impulsivity and disinhibition. Impulsivity/disinhibition includes personality traits such as sensation seeking and aggressiveness. I refer to some substance abusers as edge walkers. Impulsive individuals are at increased risk for substance use. The problems that result from these risk-taking behaviors lead to a vicious cycle of taking more substances to alleviate the feelings of pain, anxiety, and depression. This debilitation cycle continues until users recognize their own powerlessness and destructive behavior, or until they end up in jail or dead. Social learning theory. A variation of models can be considered psychosocial or social learning models. The key elements of these models is the social learning aspect of substance use. Social learning theory also incorporates other models, such as tension reduction models, addictive behaviors, social learning. Addictive behaviors are learned habits that can be analyzed in the same way as any other habit. The determinants of addictive behaviors are situational and environmental factors, beliefs and expectations, and family history and prior learning experiences with substance or activity. Frequently, addictive behaviors are exhibited under conditions that are perceived as stressful. To that degree, they represent maladaptive coping behaviors. Social cultural models. In this review, the cultural and cross-cultural studies, Bowles identifies factors in the influence of a culture or sociological organization on rates of alcoholism. The degree to which a culture causes acute needs for adjustment of inner tension in its members. The attitudes towards drinking that the culture produces in its members, and the degree to which the culture provides substitution means of satisfaction. Societies, cultures, communities, socioeconomic groups, and even neighborhoods offering few or limited alternatives to drinking as tension relievers are more susceptible to addiction. The more these groups produce acute inner tension, suppressed or acted out aggression, extreme conflict dilemmas, mixed messages, sexual tensions, and the contoning of attitudes about substances as normal, accepted way of relieving these tensions, the more prone individuals are to develop substances dependency. Substances frequently denote power or feeling powerful to users. The expression getting high symbolizes feeling above others or above one's usual sense of self. Ironically, despite the original reason for using drugs to feel powerful, the ultimate state in the cycle of addiction makes the individual powerless. Cocaine is a drug that has symbolic meaning of power. Alcohol and drugs as a self-destruction. Substances can also have a powerful meaning as weapons of self-destruction and ultimately death. In the family of drug abuse and addiction, an addict is described as a part of a continuum of self-destruction. Addicts have a higher death rate, a shorter than average life expectancy, and a greater than normal incidency of sudden death compared to non-addicts. Addicts also have a more positive and potent view of death and are more likely to express a wish for death. Substances, alcohol, and drugs in seduction and sexuality. Substances have important symbolic seduction and sexuality meanings. Practically all drugs and alcohol have been described as sometimes as an aphrodisiac. Unfortunately, no drug is truly an aphrodisiac. Substances may reduce inhibitions and stimulate sexual arousal at low doses. However, alcohol and other drugs impair sexual performance, especially with prolonged use. For future orientation and hope, Depression has roots in its poor future orientation. Individuals who see their future as negative might abuse drugs. Having a short-range view, many individuals who use substances report that they don't expect to live long, thinking that their lifespan is limited. They are not concerned about having good physical health. Many adolescents have a poor future orientation because of a continued pattern of academic failure or a difficult family situation. Academic failures, especially in late elementary grades, are highly correlated with early antisocial behavior and substance use. And finally, hopelessness. It is hard to identify a single factor that leads to feelings of hopelessness. So hopeless, that a person gives up and stops trying to grow, achieve, or develop. Many clients feel as if they are getting nowhere despite their continued efforts. It could be the hopelessness of poverty or financial disaster or other social economic loss. It could be the shattering of idealism in one's work and relationships. Anything can lead to hopelessness, which can lead to increased drug use, substance problems, and addiction. So that's it for this video. Thank you for listening.